cortisol control and estrogen control pre-contest, priority pre-contest, but it can be, of course, applied to the off-season too. Pre-contest, a lot of bodybuilders are over the top, super extreme. They want to crush anything that they've read about that's negative, that could halt fat loss, could catabolize muscle, anything remotely negative that's perpetrated as the truth, even if it might not be 100% verified. Bodybuilders will go to the extreme and demolish it. So estrogen is usually a bad guy, and so is cortisol. You will see a lot of competitors either being ill-advised by someone or just by their own reading, and they will want to destroy cortisol levels before a show and destroy estrogen levels to be dry and hard and the most muscular physique they can possibly present. However, cortisol is essential in the burning of body fat. Okay, so you need a healthy cortisol response, and so you're going to have a diurnal cortisol release throughout the day, so it's going to be kind of in intermittent waves. At certain times it's higher, certain times it's lower. In the morning it's higher, in the evening it should be lower. Everyone's different. The only true way to test that is through a saliva diurnal cortisol test. 4 times a day you do a swab saliva. It's not, the blood draw is not so accurate. So you do need cortisol at an optimal range, and cortisol needs to do something. I mean, cortisol is a catabolic hormone. So that means it breaks down tissue. That means it liberates glucose. It can also, yes, it can also liberate and break down amino acids, muscle tissue, but it can liberate glucose and free fatty acids, and it causes you to burn body fat too. So you need a healthy amount. A lot of people will use, or did use back 15 years ago, 20 years ago, cytidrin. And you still hear about it very vaguely. Cytidrin, in my opinion, made no sense. It was a drug for Cushing's disease or Cushing's syndrome, and it essentially blocked every pathway of a lot of major hormones. I even think it blocked DHEA conversion, it blocked testosterone, estrogen, cortisol. You shut everything down. It was an anti-androgen to some degree. I mean, it had a lot of negative properties, and one of them was slight estrogenic reduction, I believe, and slight cortisol reduction, and you needed to kind of mega dose it to get that cortisol reduction. So a lot of people did use that, and in my opinion, you know, you're already so shredded and lean at that point. I don't know if they would even know if it made a huge difference, because you're on so many other drugs and different variables are involved. It never came to my attention or appealed to me to use cytidrin in my plight and my journey whenever I was competing. Another thing is, some people will go overboard on the anti-estrogens, anti-aromatase inhibitors, and this is what I've heard several times from competitors. And they say, hey, you know, I have so-and-so is advising me, and they have me on 2.5 to 5 milligrams of letrozole, 1 to 2 milligrams of Arimidex. They have me on Aromacin, maybe Nolvadex. They have like every type of anti-estrogen, just gung-ho the last 2 weeks. I think they're going to get harder and drier. All right, first of all, that's super unhealthy just for your lipid profile, because anti-aromatase inhibitors, letrozole, Arimidex, can be a little harsh on the lipid profile. And secondly, you need some type of estrogen. You need a little bit of estrogen in an optimal range, like a low normal range, to properly liberate and burn body fat. Hormone-sensitive lipase is dependent on proper estrogen control, glycogen synthesis, and loading your muscle cells properly so they're full needs some estrogen. So you're going to need to be not a cheap bodybuilder. You're going to have to actually test your estradiol levels, and you want them to be in that low normal range, 20, 18, whatever. You don't want them in the gutter. You don't want them to like 2 or 3 or 4 or near 0, which is what letrozole could easily do, because you'll actually inhibit fat loss. You'll inhibit fullness. So you don't want to do that. So I recommend everyone out there, you know, like I've always said, bodybuilders were selfish, egotistical, and whenever you're selfish, you don't want to spend money on things that aren't really that big of a deal to you or aren't immediate, like blood tests, blood work, all that stuff. You need to invest in that, because you need to know those accurate numbers about where you're at. Some people are obsessive compulsive and do a lot of blood work. Some people are the opposite. I want everyone to do blood work, find out what their estrogen is, and they can curtail their dose of Arimidex or whatever to make sure their estrogen's in optimal range. You can go toggle it up or down. That is my best advice for everyone.
Speaking of being selfish, you might as well talk about a little bit about cortisol here.
Right. Also, natural products. I'm not one to like push or shove my products down people's throat. My product, Cortisol, is the highest dose phosphatidylserine product on the market. It's 800 milligrams for a little delicious scoop of hot cocoa flavor powder, and that will optimize cortisol levels. It's a nutritive ingredient, so you can't really overdose it. It's not going to put you in the gutter. It's just going to put you in a really healthy range, and it's worked a lot of wonders on female competitors primarily that I've seen that are overstressed with a typical bikini diet of 2 ounces of protein and vegetables and all that stuff and over cardio, but it works for anyone in a high stress environment. So yeah, cortisol from my company, MPA Sups, and then even other things I think like adaptogenic herbs like bacoba, magnolia bark, rhodiola. Those things can help too with cortisol and stress overall, holy basil. So yeah, you want to not be a cheap ass and go get your blood work done and make sure you're in optimal range. Remember, the cortisol is the diurnal saliva test. It's a 4 swab test throughout the day.